Following the test results of the chatbot implementation in the pilot stage, and also the recommendations for the architecture and design, we also developed a roadmap or a suggested roadmap for a proper chatbot implementation for Kenya Revenue Authority. This is, of course, a suggested step that can be conducted. And here we explain a little more about what we considered before the proposal. We perceive that there is a strong interest in using this approach, but there has not been a formal inclusion in the long-term corporate plan as far as we know. The corporate plan, meaning the KRA long-term plan or strategic plan. Also, at the moment, there is no budget assigned for implementing the chatbot or similar technology in Kenya Revenue Authority. There is no previous knowledge or experience in KRA officials about implementing chatbots. So there's a higher risk of misunderstanding or false steps to be taken if not properly assisted or consulted. The implementation of chatbots is relatively new in corporate environments. Although there are a couple of years that these technologies are around, it is recommended that the implementation should be taken in steps to allow the organization to learn not only the technologies involved, but also the changes in the internal processes needed to support the chatbot behavior. Also, although there is data from frequently asked questions answered by current agents, is not noticeable a well-organized knowledge database properly classified and reviewed by technical and legal officers. So this will mean that some effort had to be taken to prepare the first 50 questions we may use in the pilot, meaning that also for the rest of the questions, there should be an effort to properly organize them. It will take time to organize this and verify and approve the frequently asked questions that should be fed to the chatbot. So this time should be taken into consideration. The IT department comments that there is no previous knowledge in these technologies. Also, most of the support and maintenance to the current core system takes most of the time of their and resources. An important part of the systems are maintained by outsourced companies, and there will be challenges to be addressed when trying to integrate new technologies into the IT corporate environment. This will be particularly important when addressing the API integration needed for the chatbot with tax and customs systems for handling fully assisted tasks required for the users. There are also concerns related to acceptance of regular users to the chatbot system, not only because it will be a new way to communicate, but also because it may lack some of the personalized attention they are used to get from KRA agents. These are most of considerations taken before the suggestions of the roadmap. So how we propose that the implementation should be undertaken? Well, this chart shows the stage over time. Now we are on finalized 2019, we are in 2020, 2020, and we conducted the pilot test. Depending on how soon the implementation can start, we think that this will be implemented alongside 4 or 5 years in 4 main stages. I will explain each of the stages now. Well, the pilot stage. The pilot stage is this ongoing stage. The chatbot pilot is the stage conducted with the purpose of giving KRA officers a first look of how a chatbot can work. Know one of the ways information can be organized before uploading to the bot, and also some ideas of how to review chatbot operation. It also outlines a high-level design and proposed roadmap for implementation, this roadmap. The next stage will be the web chatbot stage 1. This proposed stage, we think that maybe the most challenging one, because it will be the first production-ready chatbot KRA should release. Among other things, for this stage, we think Kenya Revenue Authority should consider. Select the implementation strategy. Some of the alternatives are outlined and I'll analyze it later in this webinar. Conform a permanent chatbot team with commitment to deliver the product from start to finish. Select the persons or companies that will go along with the project dependent also in the strategy selected. Of course, assign budget for the implementation. Review and approve the chatbot scope for this stage, and of course, planning and executing the stage. But what is the recommended scope of this stage? Well, in this stage, we think that it should include between 50 and 150 frequently asked questions. It also should include between 3 and 10 fully automated assistant tasks of public nature, maybe not requiring credentials, like verifying the tax certificate, or maybe like resetting the password or tasks like that. It should include a web user interface for the chatbot, similar as the one we saw in the pilot. It should, of course, include person-to-person escalation. That will mean interacting with the current CRM system. It should include basic reports to monitor chatbot performance and a way to update or retrain the chatbot when it fails to recognize the questions. Reports are similar to the ones that we presented on the pilot. It should include a basic procedure, maybe manual, to update or modify the chatbot knowledge data. That will mean maybe weekly sessions to review the chatbot performance and identify where it's not correctly answering the questions. So I'm putting in place the procedure to update properly the chatbot. It also should include basic user handling and user bot logging and reporting, similar as the one we saw in the pilot. For the production purposes, in this stage, KRA should consider the following. It should be a fully tested interface design, so it's easy to understand for the users and also is easy to maintain. It should be planned to be 24/7 by 365 or full-time availability with a planned downtime no more than 2 hours per month, or an unplanned downtime of no more than 1 hour per month. For the planned downtime for maintainability or for updates, and maybe for improving the chatbot behavior. It should consider the capability of support at least 100 concurrent sessions and the capability of support at least 1,000 user queries by day. So this means that these numbers can be reviewed, but what we think is that in the early stages, not too many people will engage with the chatbot. So this capability of handling 100 concurrent sessions is more than enough for the first stage. Also, in this stage, as it will be the first time the chatbot will be released to the public, we think that we should consider the following. Extended testing with user representatives and user randomly selected representatives should be conducted. So before releasing, we have as much as feedback as we can get. A well-planned and orchestrated campaign to let users know about the existence of the chatbot and incentivize its use. The campaign should include surveys and user feedback related to the acceptance of the bot. So as we explained it before, at this point, a public campaign should be conducted maybe on television or social media or a web page that will allow the user to know that there's this new type of services and that how they can access it so they can take advantage, and also to conduct frequently surveys so any bad response can be catch immediately to correct it. The chatbot team should be working permanently for the first months, and later, when everything goes smoothly, partially, so they can monitor and adjust and report the authorities about the chatbot performance. This stage maybe last 1 year, including implementation and properly monitoring the work of the chatbot. This should be, this timeline can change depending on how much effort and the strategy that KRA adopts for implementing the chatbot. The next stage, web chatbot stage 2, will be the following. We recommend that this stage will be conducted maybe 10 months later, 10 or 12 months later, after the release or of the first stage, and it will allow the first stage to be mature. So the user acceptance of the chatbot is obtained. The chatbot team is confident in the process of configuring and monitoring the chatbot, and most of, if not all, of any issues that arise are corrected. In this stage, we propose that we extend the functionality of the chatbot in the following ways. We should add the rest of the identified frequently asked questions to the chatbot knowledge database. We should add the rest of the identified public assistant tasks to be fully automated. We can add also fully automated assistant tasks that requires credentials, meaning that we can, for example, implement assistant tasks like returning the current balance of the current account of the taxpayer, for example. we think that in this stage, we can also add a user interface to allow the chatbot team to retrain the chatbot and add knowledge database items, meaning that in this stage, we can add more functionality to the system so the chatbot will interact directly with the chatbot to update the information. Remember, in the first stage, we said that this updating should be maybe manually conducted. In this stage, we can add a user interface so the chatbot team can directly update the database. We also recommend that in this second stage, more reports or KPIs related overall user assistant should be included. And of course, including information related to overall user assistance using chatbot and agents. This stage, as we can see, is more about adding more functionality to the bot. Depending on the usage during the first stage, some studies should be conducted to identify more concurrentization support for daily queries. We think that depending on how many users will engage and use in the first stage, studies should be conducted to allow to increment the concurrency or the how many users the chatbot can support. Now for the third stage, we call here voice and social media support, meaning that, as we saw before, the first two stages are based on a web chatbot, meaning that it will mainly the user will be integrated or interacting with a web chatbot. But in this stage, we think that it's time to, instead of increasing more functionalities or more questions or more task assistance, we can increase the channels through which the user can interact with the chatbot. In this case, at this time, the web-based user interface chatbot should be working properly and include most of the common questions and assistance needed by the users. Also, smooth procedures for monitoring and correct any issue should be working properly. In this stage, it will be about increasing channel availability for the chatbot, so user can engage in chatbot interaction not only by web, but by voice, meaning the user won't need to write its questions and read the answers, but speak their questions and receive responses by voice. This can be achieved in several ways: using a gateway from regular phone to the bot, or using smart devices that include voice assistants like Google Assistant, Siri from iPhone, or Alexa from Amazon, among others. We think that one of the most correct ways to go is this second one, because implementing gateways with telephone lines is doable, but also expensive. Another channel that should be included is social media platforms, meaning that the user can engage a full conversation exactly the same as the web chatbot using WhatsApp, Twitter, Skype, or other popular social media platforms that are popular in Kenya. Of course, we think that proper studies and planning should be conducted to identify the priority for the implementation of these channels, based on Kenya device and platform usage, cost of implementation, and the reach, of course, of these devices. Now, the last stage we recommend, we call it just a chatbot stage 3. At this point of time, the chatbot should be in a mature working level, meaning it's completely integrated to user support process and is well known and used. It also means that little work should be put monthly in updating knowledge database unless, of course, KRA changes the procedures or normatives. So what we say here is that the chatbot is being used properly. The chatbot team needs to invest not so much time in monitoring and updating the chatbot, so it's running smoothly. At this time, what we think is that KRA should try to start cost optimization enforcing the chatbot usage instead of using the agents. That what will this mean? That at this point we should increase the campaign so that the user will first engage the chatbot and then later the agent if needed. So trying to at most diminish the times a user wants to talk to an agent, because this will lead to a cost effective usage of the customer service. Depending on the success of the implementation, the user interactions with chatbot should be more than the agent. So at least in stage 1, we will see maybe 5 to 10 interactions with a chatbot and 95 to 90 interactions with a real agent, a real person agent. In this stage, we should be seeing the opposite. Most of the interaction through the chatbot and the least ones with the agents. Well, what about how to implement the chatbot? There are, of course, many approaches for implementation. Here we can outline the most frequently approached ones and pinpoint some of its advantage and disadvantage. One of the alternatives is full in-house project management and development. In this implementation alternative, all planning, design, and development should be conducted by KRA officials. Of course, it can include training and expert assessment for the key components of the project. Some of the advantages and disadvantages are that during the project development, KRA officers will acquire the know-how and keep it to give it proper maintenance and also engage in new initiatives. The disadvantage is that it may take too long to develop. And of course, because of the inexperience, some bad steps may be taken and delay the time of the implementation of the project, or maybe deliver a low quality product. Of course, as we saw that no experience in chatbots exists in KRA, some experts should be hired for consultancy. In terms of partial in-house management and development plus outsourcing alternative, this will be a case where KRA will evaluate if some of the project management or development needed can be done by internal personnel leaving other technical activities to be developed by an outsourced company. That will mean that is a shared approach, leaving some things to the internal personnel and leaving other things to an experienced chatbot company or consultant. The advantage of this approach is that maybe as there is a continuous interaction between the KRA officials and the team from the outsourced consultant, there will be more opportunities to acquire knowledge or during the implementation of the project. Also, as the process will be accompanied by an experienced consultants, less risk should be that there are setbacks or bad decisions during the development of the project. And the disadvantage is that normally when a project is approached in that way, there's more chances that issues related to mixed responsibilities arise. So when problems occur, there are fingers pointing of who was responsible of the problem or who is responsible of the delays, and that also can be a possibility for canceling contracts and things like that. The other alternative, and another alternative for implementation will be hire the chatbot as a service. Meaning in this scenario, the Kenya Revenue Authority will hire a consultant, a person or a company that will provide the chatbot fully as a service, meaning that the project planning, the development, or configuration will be conducted by the consultant, leaving KRA officers with providing the proper information to include in the chatbot database. Some specialized assistance from IT department may be needed in implementing the API or the application program interface to connect to the core system and to the CRM customer service system. Of course, if correctly selected, the consultant can implement this really fast. There is less risk of failure. And normally, if the service provider has experience, it will charge for this service with a one-time payment for the overall setup, so to start, and a less significant payment that can be conducted monthly. The disadvantage are that maybe is really not much possibility to knowledge transfer. So at most, the KRA will depend on the service provided to continue upgrade to handle the service for the ongoing years. And of course, there can be a mix of some of these alternatives that can be analyzed depending on what priorities or budget the Kenya Revenue Authority has.